The Great Hall of Nexus Prime Station was the largest room ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Light came from thousands of floating crystals that moved slowly through the air like lazy fireflies. Today, the hall was full. Representatives from 12 elder species sat in their designated areas. Each species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. They were proud. They were powerful. And most of them believed that younger species like humans were barely worth noticing. High Speaker Torval of the Velith Dominion stood at the central platform. He was tall, almost 3 meters, with green scales that shimmered under the crystal light. His eyes were yellow with black slits, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the massive chamber like thunder. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Torval began. His words translated instantly into hundreds of languages. I bring grave news. The species known as humans, who we graciously allowed to observe our proceedings, have committed acts of war against the Velith Dominion. A murmur ran through the crowd. In the observer gallery, a small group of humans sat quietly. They wore simple gray uniforms with blue Earth emblems on their shoulders. At their center sat a woman with short black hair and calm eyes. Her name was Una Park, and she was the president of the United Earth Federation. Beside her sat Fleet Admiral Do-Hyun Kang, a broad-shouldered man with gray hair in his temples. His face showed no emotion, but his hands were tight fists on his knees. On the president's other side was Chief Diplomat Ji-Yeon Beek, a younger woman who was already taking notes on a small device. Torval continued his speech. 3 days ago, human warships attacked Velith transport vessels in the Outer Rim. These transports carried colonists' families, children seeking new homes. The humans destroyed them without warning, without mercy. He waved his clawed hand, and holographic images appeared in the air. They showed sensor logs, energy signatures, and what appeared to be human ship designs firing weapons at helpless transports. The images were clear and damning. "We demand justice," Torval declared. "We demand that humanity answer for this crime against the Velith people." The council members began talking among themselves. Some looked at the human delegation with disgust. Others seemed curious. The Etherni, beings made of pure light who rarely spoke, flickered with colors that suggested deep thought. The council speaker, an ancient creature called First Voice Meridian, raised a tentacle for silence. The humans will be given a chance to respond. President Park, you may address the council. All eyes turned to the observer gallery. Una Park stood slowly. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive. Among the giants and monsters and glowing entities of the elder races, she looked almost like a child. But when she walked to the speaking platform, her steps were steady and sure. Admiral Kang and Diplomat Beek followed her, taking positions slightly behind. The 3 humans stood before the assembled might of galactic civilization, and they did not look afraid. "Thank you, First Voice," President Park said. Her voice was soft but clear, and the translation systems carried it to every corner of the hall. "Before I respond to the accusations of the Velith Dominion, I must request formal speaking rights under council law. I wish to present evidence and witnesses." First Voice Meridian nodded slowly. "Granted. You may speak freely." President Park took a moment to look around the chamber. She looked at the Velith delegation, where Torval stood with his arms crossed and a small smile on his reptilian face. She looked at the other species, most of whom had already decided that humans were guilty. She looked at the floating crystals above, casting their gentle light on this gathering of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Then she spoke. "You attacked our home." The words were simple. The words were quiet. But they fell on the chamber like bombs. Torval's smile disappeared. "What did you say?" You attacked our home, President Park repeated. 4 months ago, a Velith war fleet entered the Kepler system. They approached our colony on Kepler 442b. This colony was home to 62,000 human beings, farmers, scientists, teachers, children. She paused. Families. The chamber was completely silent now. The Velith ships did not announce themselves. They did not make demands. They did not attempt contact. President Park's voice remained calm, but something hard appeared in her eyes. They simply opened fire. They bombarded the colony for 6 hours. When they were finished, they landed troops to ensure no survivors remained. Torval stepped forward. These are lies. Desperate lies from a primitive species caught in their crimes. I have a witness, President Park said, ignoring him completely. His name is HFY Shin. He was a maintenance technician on Kepler 442b. He survived because he was working in an underground water facility when the attack began. She gestured, and a hologram appeared beside her. It showed a young man with tired eyes and burned scars on his neck. He wore a simple Earth uniform, and his hands trembled slightly as he began to speak. My name is HFY Shin. The recording began. I am 31 years old. I was born on Earth, in a city called Bizin. I moved to Kepler 442b with my wife Yoonji and our daughter when the colony opened. It was supposed to be a new beginning. The man in the hologram paused to steady himself. The night it happened, I was checking water pipes in the underground level. I heard sounds. Thunder, I thought. But the thunder did not stop. It went on and on. When I came up, his voice broke. When I came up, there was nothing left. The buildings were gone. The farms were burning. And the bodies. HFY could not continue. The hologram showed him covering his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. President Park let the image hang in the air for a long moment. Then she turned to face High Speaker Torval directly. His wife died in the attack, she said quietly. His daughter was 3 years old. The Velith soldiers found her hiding under a collapsed wall. They killed her anyway. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members shouted questions. Some demanded proof. Others demanded silence. The Velith delegation was screaming that this was all fabrication, all lies, all human tricks. But President Park stood still in the center of the chaos, her eyes never leaving Torval's face. And for the first time, the High Speaker of the Velith Dominion looked uncertain. The assembly had begun, and humanity was just getting started. First Voice Meridian finally restored order in the Great Hall. The ancient creature's voice boomed through the chamber, silencing even the loudest protests. The floating crystals above seemed to dim slightly, as if the room itself was holding its breath. President Park, First Voice said, these are serious accusations. The council requires proof. High Speaker Torval stepped forward immediately. There can be no proof because there was no attack. This is nothing but human manipulation. They are trying to distract from their own crimes. Everyone knows humans are violent and primitive. They probably destroyed their own colony and blamed us. Several species murmured in agreement. The Kreth Collective, insectoid beings who clicked when they communicated, made sounds of approval. The Velith had been their allies for centuries. President Park did not react to the insults. She simply nodded to Jian Beek, who stepped forward with a small device in her hand. Honored council members, Jian said, her voice steady and professional. I am Chief Diplomat Jian Beek. I will present the evidence we have collected over the past 4 months. She activated the device, and the air around the central platform filled with holographic displays. Data streams, sensor readings, and images began to organize themselves into clear patterns. First, the physical evidence. Gian pointed to a section of the display. These are fragments recovered from the destroyed buildings on Kepler 442b. Notice the burn patterns. They match Velith plasma weapons exactly. Our scientists compared them to known Velith military equipment. The match is perfect. Torval scoffed. Anyone can fake burn patterns. Perhaps, Gian agreed. But can anyone fake this? She expanded another section of the display. These are genetic samples we collected from the ruins. Velith DNA, scales, blood, and other biological material left behind by the ground troops who finished what the orbital bombardment started. The chamber grew quieter. Genetic evidence was difficult to dismiss. This proves nothing, Torval insisted, but his voice was slightly less confident. There could have been Velith visitors to the colony who died in whatever disaster the humans caused themselves. Kepler 442b had no Velith visitors, Gian replied calmly. We checked every immigration record, every ship that ever landed there. No Velith had visited our colony in its entire existence. So how did Velith genetic material end up scattered across our destroyed city? She did not wait for an answer. Instead, she brought up the next piece of evidence. Second, the black box recordings. The display shifted to show twisted metal fragments. When the attack happened, several underground facilities survived long enough to record what was happening. Here is audio from the colony's emergency shelter. Sound filled the chamber. At first, it was just static and chaos. Then voices became clear. Human voices, speaking in terrified Korean and English. What's happening? What's happening? The sky is on fire. Everything is burning. Get the children underground. Move, then a different sound. Heavy footsteps. Weapons charging. And a voice speaking in the harsh, hissing language of the Velith. Clear this structure. No survivors. War Council orders. Screams followed. Then silence. The recording ended, and the great hall was completely quiet. Even the Kreth Collective had stopped their clicking.gyeon beak. Let the silence hang for a moment before continuing. The phrase War Council orders is significant. The Velith War Council is not a rogue military group. It is the official governing body of Velith military operations. Every member of that council was appointed by High Speaker Torval himself. All eyes turned to Torval. The tall reptilian was no longer smiling. His yellow eyes darted around the chamber as if looking for escape. This is manipulation, he said, but his voice had lost its thunder. The humans have created false recordings. They are known for their deception. President Park spoke for the first time since the evidence presentation began. If we are so skilled at deception, High Speaker, then please explain this. She gestured, and the largest hologram yet appeared in the air. It showed a document covered in Velith script with official seals and signatures clearly visible. This is the attack order, President Park said. It was recovered from a Velith cruiser that crash-landed on Kepler 442b during the assault. One of our survivors found it in the wreckage. The document orders the complete destruction of the human colony and specifically states that no prisoners are to be taken, children included. She turned to face Torval directly. The signature at the bottom belongs to you, High Speaker. Chaos erupted again. Council members shouted over each other. Some demanded to examine the document. Others called for immediate action against the Velith. The Etherny flickered rapidly between colors. Their light forms agitated in ways no one had seen before. Torval was shaking his head violently. Forgery. This is forgery. Then submit to a council truth verification, President Park said simply. Allow the Ethrani to examine your memories. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. Everyone knew that Ethrani memory examination was impossible to fool. Their light forms could enter the minds of other species and see their true memories. It was rarely used because it was considered a violation of privacy. But in matters of war and genocide, it was permitted. Torval's scales seemed to pale. The Velith Dominion does not submit to such invasive procedures. Why not? Asked a deep voice from across the chamber. It was Representative Garth of the Morthic, massive stone-like beings who had remained silent until now. If you speak truth, the examination proves your innocence. If you refuse, we must assume you have something to hide. More species voiced their agreement. The Velith delegation began arguing among themselves. Several of them were looking at Torval with expressions that suggested doubt. President Park watched all of this calmly. Then she raised her hand for attention. "Honored council members," she said, "I did not come here seeking war. I did not come here seeking revenge. I came here seeking justice. Over 40,000 of my people were murdered while they slept. Children were hunted through burning streets. Families were erased from existence." Her voice remained steady, but tears formed in her eyes. She did not wipe them away. "We are a young species. We have been traveling among the stars for only 200 years. We came into this galaxy hoping to find friends, teachers, and partners in exploration. Instead, we found that some species see our youth as weakness. They see our openness as stupidity. They see our desire for peace as an invitation to slaughter." She looked around the chamber at the assembled elder races. The Velith attacked us because they thought we could not fight back. They thought no one would care about dead humans. They thought we would simply accept our losses and bow our heads. President Park straightened her shoulders. They were wrong. Admiral Kang stepped forward, and every eye in the chamber turned to him. The military man's face was hard as stone. "Shall the first show them what we have done in response, President?" Unipark nodded slowly. "Show them, Admiral. Show them all." Admiral Dongyan Kang was not a man who enjoyed speaking. He had spent his entire career giving orders, not making speeches. But as he stepped to the center of the platform, something in his presence commanded attention. The elder races, beings who had seen civilizations rise and fall, found themselves leaning forward to listen. "When we received news of the Kepler 442b attack," Kang began, his voice low and rough, "our first instinct was rage. Pure, burning rage. I will not lie to you. Many in our military wanted immediate retaliation. They wanted to strike at Velith worlds to make them feel what we felt." He paused, letting his words settle. "But we did not do that." President Park ordered restraint. She said that revenge would only prove the Velith right about us. She said that if we truly wanted to be a civilized species, we had to act like one. Even when our hearts were screaming for blood. Torval made a dismissive sound. "Pretty words. But we all know what humans really did. They attacked our transports. We have the sensor logs." Kang turned to face the high speaker with cold eyes. "I will explain those sensor logs. But first, let me tell you what we actually did for 4 months while you thought you had gotten away with murder." The holographic display changed to show a map of human-controlled space. 6 points glowed red. "These are other colony worlds," Kang explained. "After Kepler 442b, we realized we were vulnerable. The Velith had shown us that they would attack civilians without warning. So we prepared." He zoomed in on one of the red points. "Colony New Bizan. Population 340,000. Within 1 week of the Kepler attack, we began secret evacuation. We moved people at night. We used cargo ships disguised as mining vessels. We told no one what we were doing." The display showed footage of families boarding ships in the dark. Children clutching toys. Elderly people being helped into transport pods. Everything was quiet and orderly, but the fear on their faces was clear. Within 6 weeks, we had evacuated 2.3 million people from our most vulnerable colonies. We moved them to protected worlds deeper in our territory. We built underground shelters. We prepared for the worst. A council member from the Ethrani collective flickered with pale blue light. Their melodic voice filled the chamber. "You expected further attacks?" "We knew they were coming," Kang replied. "The Veleth do not strike once and stop. They test weakness, then exploit it. We had to assume Kepler 442b was only the beginning." He changed the display again. Now it showed ship movements across a section of space. During this time, we also sent rescue missions to Kepler 442b. We searched for survivors in the ruins. We recovered bodies for proper burial. We collected evidence. His jaw tightened. And we found the crashed Veleth cruiser with the attack orders. "These rescue missions," Torval interrupted, "are what attacked our transport ships. You admit it yourself." Kang actually smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "No, High Speaker. Your transport ships attacked us." Confusion rippled through the chamber. Torval looked genuinely puzzled. Kang pulled up new sensor data. "You see, your so-called transport ships were not transports at all. They were disguised military vessels, sent to finish what the first attack started. They were supposed to destroy our rescue teams and any evidence we might have recovered." The display showed enhanced images of the Veleth ships. Under their civilian markings, military-grade weapon systems were clearly visible. When your ships arrived at Kepler 442b and found our rescue fleet, they opened fire without warning. Just like before, they expected to destroy us easily. Kang's smile grew wider. They were surprised. New footage played. It showed a battle in space, but not the one-sided massacre the Veleth had described. Human ships, faster and more nimble than expected, dodged Veleth weapons' fire. They returned fire with precise, concentrated attacks. One by one, the Veleth ships were disabled. "We did not destroy your ships," Kang said. "We disabled them. We captured their crews alive. We treated their wounded and gave them food and water. That is the difference between humans and the Veleth." The chamber was dead silent. "The sensor logs that High Speaker Torval presented to this council are fake," Kang continued. "They were created to show human aggression where none existed. The real logs, which we have provided to council security, show the truth. The Veleth attacked first, again. A new figure appeared in the holographic display. A woman in a captain's uniform, with sharp eyes and hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked tired but determined. "This is Captain Narration," Kang introduced her. She commanded the rescue fleet. She also commanded our carrier, the Hedong, which led our defensive response. Captain Marie's recorded voice filled the chamber. "When the Veleth ships opened fire on my fleet, I had a choice. I could retreat and let them destroy the evidence we had gathered. Or I could fight back and risk starting a war. I chose to fight." She paused in the recording, her eyes hard. "But I gave my crew strict orders. No killing unless absolutely necessary. Disable, do not destroy. Capture, do not execute. We are not like them. We will never be like them." The recording ended, and Kang turned to face the council. "We have been preparing for this moment since the night our people died," he said. "Every action we took was documented. Every decision was made with the knowledge that we would one day stand before you and explain ourselves. We knew the Veleth would try to twist the truth. We knew they would call us aggressors. So we made sure the truth could not be hidden." President Park stepped forward to stand beside her admiral. "We could have responded to the Kepler attack with overwhelming force. We have the ships. We have the weapons. We could have struck at Veleth colonies and killed millions of their people in return." Her voice carried across the vast chamber, quiet but clear. But we chose not to. Not because we are weak. Not because we are afraid. But because we believe that strength without justice is just cruelty. And cruelty is what the Velith offered us. We will not become what they are. She looked directly at Torval. We reported the attack through proper diplomatic channels months ago. We followed every procedure. We waited for the council to investigate. But our reports were never received. Were they, High Speaker? Because you intercepted them. You buried them. You thought you could hide what you did and then blame us for defending ourselves. Torval's scales had gone from green to an ugly gray color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. From across the chamber, the Kreth Collective's lead representative made a clicking sound that translated as a question. High Speaker Torval, the humans say you intercepted their diplomatic communications. Is this true? All eyes turned to Torval. The tall reptilian seemed to shrink under the weight of those stares. I, the Velith Dominion. We have done nothing wrong. He finally managed. But even his own delegation was looking at him with doubt now. Admiral Kang turned off the holographic display. We have given you the truth. We have given you evidence. Now we ask, what will you do with it? The Great Hall of Nexus Prime had seen many dramatic moments in its long history. Wars had been declared within these walls. Peace treaties had been signed. Empires had risen and fallen based on decisions made under the floating crystal lights. But no one present could remember a moment quite like this. High Speaker Torval stood alone in the center of the platform. His own delegation had moved away from him, creating visible distance. The other elder races watched with a mixture of shock, anger, and fascination. And the humans waited with patient eyes. First Voice Meridian spoke into the heavy silence. This council will now hear from any member species who has information relevant to these proceedings. For a moment, no one moved. Then a soft glow filled one section of the chamber. The Ethreni were speaking. We must confess something, the lead Ethreni said. Their voice was like music, beautiful and sad at the same time. 4 months ago, our long-range sensors detected unusual energy signatures in the Kepler system. We saw evidence of orbital bombardment. We saw the destruction of human structures. The chamber stirred with murmurs. We did not report this to the council, the Ethreni continued. We assumed it was an internal human matter. Perhaps a civil conflict or an accident. We did not think that another species would attack civilians without cause. The light being flickered with what appeared to be shame. We were wrong to remain silent. For this, we apologize to humanity. President Park nodded slowly. We appreciate your honesty. But the revelations were not finished. From another section of the chamber, clicking sounds announced that the Kreth Collective wished to speak. Their lead representative, a tall insectoid with 4 arms and compound eyes, stepped forward. We also have information, the Kreth said. 6 weeks before the human colony was destroyed, High Speaker Torval approached our collective. He proposed an alliance against humanity. He said that humans were a threat to all elder races. He said their expansion had to be stopped before they became too powerful. Shock rippled through the assembly. Alliance proposals were supposed to be reported to the council. Secret military alliances were forbidden. We refused his proposal, the Kreth continued. Humans have never shown hostility to our kind. We saw no reason to make them enemies. But we did not report the proposal to the council. We did not want to create conflict with the Velith Dominion. The insectoid turned toward the human delegation. This was a mistake. We apologize. More species began to speak up. The Morthic revealed that Velith diplomats had tried to spread rumors about human aggression for months. The Solari admitted they had heard whispers of planned attacks on human territory. One by one, pieces of a larger picture emerged. The Velith had been planning this for a long time. The attack on Kepler 442b was not an accident or a mistake. It was the first step in a campaign to destroy or enslave humanity before they could become a real power in the galaxy. Through all of this, Torval's face grew darker and darker. His scales shifted colors from gray to an angry red. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. When the last revelation was spoken, something inside him seemed to snap. "Enough!" he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I will not stand here and be insulted by primitive species and cowardly allies. The Velith Dominion is one of the founding members of this council. We built empires when most of you were still crawling in mud. We will not apologize for taking action against a clear threat." He pointed directly at President Park. "Humans breed like insects. They spread across the galaxy without restraint. They take resources, claim territory, and multiply endlessly. In another century, they would outnumber us all. We did what was necessary to protect elder civilization from being overrun by mammals who discovered fire 10 minutes ago." The chamber erupted in noise. But Torval was not finished. "And if this council is too blind to see the threat, then the Velith will act alone. We do not need your approval. We do not need your permission. Our fleets are vast. Our warriors are mighty. And we will crush any species that stands in our way." He turned his yellow eyes toward the humans. "Starting with you. Accept your losses and submit to Velith authority, or face complete destruction." The thread hung in the air like poison. President Park looked at Torval for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was not a happy smile or a cruel smile. It was the smile of a tired person who had prepared for this moment and hoped it would not come. "Admiral Kang," she said quietly, "show them." Kang activated a new display. The hologram expanded to show a map of the galaxy, centered on Velith space. And around the Velith home system, hundreds of small lights appeared. 312 ships, Kang said. "The entire Earth Defense Fleet. They have been in position for the last 3 weeks." The chamber went completely silent. The elder races stared at the display with wide eyes. 300 ships was not the largest fleet in the galaxy, but it was far more than anyone had expected from the young human species. "We moved them slowly," Kang explained, quietly, "using routes that your sensors do not cover well. Your own arrogance made you blind. You were so busy planning our destruction that you never thought to watch your own borders." Torval's red scales turned pale again. This is an act of war." "No," President Park said firmly. "It is an act of defense. Our ships have not fired a single weapon. They have not entered Velith territory. They are positioned in neutral space, watching and waiting." She stepped closer to Torval, looking up at the tall reptilian without fear. "We do not want war, High Speaker. We never wanted war. We came to the stars seeking peace and knowledge. We would have been your friends if you had let us." Her voice hardened. "But we will not be your victims. We will not let our children be hunted through burning streets. We will not submit to species who see us as prey." She turned to address the entire council. "If the Velith attack Earth or any human colony, our fleet will respond. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to ensure that no Velith warship ever threatens human lives again. We would prefer to settle this matter through the council. We would prefer justice through law. But if law fails, we will protect ourselves." First Voice Meridian leaned forward. "You would go to war with an elder race?" President Park met the ancient being's eyes. "We would defend our people against any race, elder or otherwise. Age does not grant the right to murder." The Velith delegation was in chaos. Several members were shouting at Torval in their own language. Others were trying to contact their home world, only to find that communications were being blocked by council security. The High Speaker stood alone, his threats revealed as empty, his plans destroyed. Admiral Kang shut down the display. Our ships will remain in position until this matter is resolved. We hope resolution comes through peace. But we are prepared for any outcome. The weight of consequence had fallen on the Velith, and for the first time in their long history, they had no answer. The vote took 3 hours. 3 hours of debate, argument, and careful consideration. But when it was finished, the result was clear. The Velith Dominion was found guilty of unprovoked aggression against a peaceful species. The punishments were severe. The Velith lost their senior membership in the Galactic Council, dropping from founding member to probationary status. Their military was restricted to defensive operations only, with council observers stationed on every major warship. Massive reparations were ordered, including funds to rebuild Kepler 442b and support the families of the victims. But the most dramatic moment came when the Velith delegation itself turned on High Speaker Torval. A younger diplomat named Second Voice Kellox stepped forward and spoke words that shocked the chamber. The Velith people were deceived by High Speaker Torval, Kellox announced. His war council acted without the knowledge or approval of our civilian government. He led us toward destruction for his own pride and ambition. We reject his leadership and submit him to council justice. Torval was seized by his own guards. The tall reptilian who had stood so proud just hours ago was now led away in restraints, his yellow eyes filled with disbelief. He had thought himself untouchable. He had been wrong. After the Velith matter was settled, First Voice Meridian made another announcement. This council recognizes that humanity has demonstrated qualities we value: restraint in the face of tragedy, justice in the face of lies, strength tempered by wisdom. The ancient being paused. Therefore, we propose that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only 2 species abstained, and none voted against. Humanity, a species that had been traveling among the stars for only 2 centuries, was now a full member of galactic civilization. President Park accepted the honor with a simple bow. We are grateful for this recognition, but we do not celebrate today. Too many of our people died for us to reach this moment. We only hope that their sacrifice will mean something, that it will lead to a galaxy where young species do not have to fear destruction simply for existing. In the days that followed, many delegations approached the humans privately. The Etherni offered to share their medical technology, which could extend human lifespan significantly. The Morthic proposed joint mining operations in asteroid fields rich with rare minerals. Even the Kreth Collective, who had nearly aligned with the Velith, expressed interest in trade agreements. President Park met with each delegation personally. She was patient, gracious, and firm. She accepted friendships, but made no promises that would compromise human independence. She had learned that the galaxy respected strength, not submission. One of the last meetings was with Ambassador Su-Yun No, a young diplomat who had been assigned to establish Earth's first permanent embassy on Nexus Prime. Su-Yun was nervous but determined. This was the most important assignment of her life. The embassy will be ready within 6 months, Su-Yun reported to the president. We have been given a prime location near the council chambers. Other species are already requesting meeting times. President Park smiled warmly. You will do well, Ambassador. Remember that we are not here to impress anyone. We are here to build real relationships. Quality over quantity. Yes, President. Su-Yun hesitated. May I ask you something personal? Of course. How did you stay so calm during the hearings? When Torval was threatening us, when everything seemed uncertain, you never looked afraid. President Park was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a little girl with bright eyes and a missing front tooth, laughing at the camera. Her name was Urine, the president said softly. She was my niece, my sister's daughter. She lived on Kepler 442b with her parents. They were among the first to die in the attack. Soo-yoon felt her heart break. I am so sorry, President. I kept this photograph with me through every moment of the hearings. When I felt afraid, I looked at her face. I remembered why we were fighting. Not for revenge, not for glory, but so that no other child would have to die the way she did. President Park put the photograph away. That is how I stayed calm. I had something worth being calm for. Months later, Hejun Shin stood on the surface of Kepler 442b. The colony was being rebuilt. New structures rose where the old ones had burned. New farms were planted where ashes had covered the ground. New families were arriving every week, determined to honor the memory of those who died by building something beautiful. Hejun walked slowly to the memorial wall. It was a long structure made of black stone, stretching across the center of the new settlement. Every name of every victim was carved into its surface. 43,217 names. Each one someone's parent, child, sibling, friend, or love. He found the names he was looking for. Shin Yoonji, Shin Yuna, their daughter named after the president who had fought for their memory. He touched the carved letters gently, feeling the rough stone under his fingertips. They know now, he whispered. The whole galaxy knows what happened here. They know you existed. They know you mattered. Your names will never be forgotten. He placed a small photograph against the wall. It showed him and Yoonji on their wedding day, young and happy and full of hope. Beside it, he placed a drawing their daughter had made. It was simple and childish, showing their family holding hands under a bright yellow sun. I miss you every day, Hejun said. But I am going to keep living. I am going to help build this place again. I am going to teach the new children about the old colony, about the people who lived here and dreamed here and died here. Your story will be part of their story, forever. He stepped back and looked up at the sky. A formation of Earthships was passing overhead, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Not warships. Transport vessels bringing supplies and new colonists. Ships of life, not death. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, not with conquest or cruelty, but with something harder and more lasting. With justice. With memory. With the promise that they would never forget their own. The elder races had learned a lesson they would not soon forget. Humans were young. Humans were small compared to the great empires of the stars. But humans protected their own. Humans remembered their dead. And humans would never ever bow to those who thought violence was the same as strength. In the Great Hall of Nexus Prime, President Yuna Park gave her first speech as a full council member. She spoke of hope and cooperation. She spoke of the future humanity wanted to build with its new allies. She spoke of peace. But she ended with words that echoed in the memory of every species present. We came to the stars as friends. We still offer our friendship freely. But let this day stand as proof of something else. Hurt us, and we will seek justice. Threaten our children, and we will defend them. Underestimate us, and you will regret it. Because humanity is here now, and we are not going anywhere. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It spread from delegation to delegation until the entire council was acknowledging the small, young, surprisingly strong species that had earned their place among the stars. A new dawn had come to the galaxy, and humanity stood ready to greet it